Hi guys, hope everyone is doing well and staying healthy. In this video, I want to share with you guys some things that I have experienced over the last couple weeks. And if you're a host on the platform or thinking about becoming a host, these are certain types of instances that you will face over the lifetime of doing rentals. And so I want to share with you guys what I've encountered and how I deal with situations like this and kind of what my rule of thumb is on certain types of things. So recently I had an issue with one of my cars. My renter was a great renter. He was in town with his family, and I think they were going to Six Flags or something like that, one of the theme parks, and he noticed that there was sort of a loud warping sound coming from one of the wheels and a little bit of a wobble. So thank goodness he was a great renter, and he definitely had some really great common sense, and so he pulled over right away, just kind of inspect everything. Everything looked okay. He pulled off the freeway and went to a nearby Firestone, at which point he called me to let me know that, hey, something felt really off and that the car probably wasn't safe to drive. So first and foremost, anytime a renter has a complaint about the functionality of a car, you always want to think about safety first. That is the number one thing. No matter what the issue is, whether it was caused by the renter or it's a malfunction with the car that no one could have anticipated, you always want to make sure that everyone is in a safe position, and that you don't just recommend, oh, you'll be fine, just keep driving and we'll figure it out later. You kind of want to try to diagnose it and get to the bottom of it to assess the situation properly, so that you're not putting anyone at any type of jeopardy and risking anyone's safety. So he pulled off. He gave me a call. He was at a Firestone. He asked me if it was okay if he had Firestone check it out. I was like, yeah, definitely. That was already like a great gesture that he made. And this is also why it's important to have GPS trackers, because I was immediately able to check his location, because you want to start kind of accounting for, okay, is this something that like I can go troubleshoot? Do I need to set up a tow? Where is this person at? How far is this? Where are they trying to go? So you want to start kind of working out the logistics. And for those of you that ask, I use TrackMate GPS, which is a hardwire install into the car, and you can use anything similar like that, but that's what I currently use. So basically he had Firestone check it out real quick, and he was also a renter who kind of knew about cars, and it was a loose wheel bearing, which is something that I've never experienced with any of my cars before, and of course definitely not safe to drive on. So at that point in time, I instructed him to just go ahead and park the car at Firestone. He was in a safe location. I had him leave the key in the glove box, but he was about 2 hours away from where he picked up the car at my location, so he was quite far. And of course, in an instant like that, I feel really bad. I mean, that's just not something that anyone can anticipate for, but it happened. So I had him just leave the key, went ahead, remotely locked the car, adjusted his reservation to end. He actually went ahead and booked another car from a regular car rental agency, and they sort of moved on with their trip. At that point, I called a tow truck. I got the car towed. I think this time I used Turo's roadside assistance. Now, whenever you have an instance where someone runs into some kind of an issue during their trip, what I have found in my own personal experience is that usually, and it might be different for people out there, but for me personally, I think it's safe to say it's been kind of like an 80-20 split, where 80% of the time, whatever the issue is usually caused by the renter, and 20% of the time it's because there's something just wrong with the car, and whether that's because you didn't maintain it or it's something sort of spontaneous, it could just be a number of things, right? So that's kind of what I've seen. So with noting that percentage, for me personally, one of the things that I make sure to do is to well document the conversation about what the issue is. So oftentimes when people try to call me before they message me, I don't answer by design, because I like to make sure that everything is documented through the messaging, because if you need to file a claim and then there's a discrepancy between he said, she said, oh no, it's the host's fault, the car was messed up when I got it, you just don't want to run into that type of issue. Now, the point in time when I do take phone calls is if the renter, which in most cases they do, contacts you through messaging first. You got everything documented, and if it's a little bit of a complex case where it's just easier to get on the phone and you're saving the renter time and you're making it easy for them, then you'll get on the phone and just kind of talk through it and what has to happen next. Or another time is when people get into accidents. Oftentimes, if a renter gets into an accident, they kind of freak out, especially because Turo is still a newer way of renting cars, so they're not exactly sure how it works. So they do really want to get on the phone with you, and it's always great to get on the phone with them and just kind of calm them down and just say, you know, everything's going to be okay. Here's what you need to do. Just go ahead and document everything that's happened. Make sure you get the third party's driver's license and insurance. Make sure you get photos of everything. Here is a Turo insurance card. So you want to make sure you're always prepared with all of these things, and you can assess the situation, like, is the car drivable? Do you think it's going to need to get towed? What happened? That type of thing. So that's probably the only times where I'll take phone calls. Otherwise, I'll try to have everything documented under the trip messaging if you need to file a claim. So in the case of the wheel bearing, you know, I did take on the cost of the tow because it wasn't the renter's fault, and I also didn't want to have to drive 2 hours and try to go get that car. I just wanted to get it towed to my dealership, which is also why I like to buy newer cars, because that type of stuff is covered under warranty. Had it dropped off, it took them a day to fix it, and it was just something that malfunctioned with the car, right? So these things happen. So you really want to make sure that in your toolbox, for scenarios like this, you have tools ready, like you know exactly where the Turo incident card is, which you can quickly Google that or go look that up on Turo's website. And every year when it renews, they email it to you too, so you can check in your email in your inbox for an email that should be titled Turo incident card. So make sure you always keep a copy of that on you. Make sure you keep a number for roadside assistance, which is on the incident card, and just make sure you have a plan of attack. So you want to stay present so that renters know they can reach out to you, and time is really of the essence in these type of scenarios. This is how you avoid getting bad reviews when things don't go as planned. You want to make sure that the renter knows, hey, I'm here. If you need anything, I'm here to help you troubleshoot it. I'm here to help you get through it and figure out how we're going to work this out and make sure that you have transportation and that you can move on with your trip. So communication is so important, and specifically timely communication. So that's something that I recently encountered. Today I encountered a little bit of a different situation where I had a renter who's been booking my car for a better part of a month, but she's been extending on a weekly basis. So today her reservation was up, but I was anticipating that she would likely extend because of her past pattern. However, I couldn't get a hold of her. The reservation did end, and it was about 30 minutes past her reservation time, and she finally had texted me back like, hey, sorry, time kind of got away from me, but I would like to extend. Now, once a reservation ends, a guest cannot extend their reservation. However, what they can do is book a new trip, and this is very important. You have to make sure that you merge the two trips together, and you can simply do that by contacting support. If you do not merge the two trips together, the second trip that is booked is considered a new trip, and you're likely not going to do a check-in for that trip because the renter still has the car, so you wouldn't have proper photo documentation for the start of that trip. So all you have to do, and in this case I use Turo's live chat support, so you don't even have to call in. You go to support.turo.com, they have a live chat. You just chat with them real quick saying, hey, I have 2 reservations, guest forgot to extend, could you go ahead and merge them? And basically they'll blend the 2 reservations together and turn them into one. So you want to make sure you do that, and you only have 24 hours to do that. After that, for whatever reason, they won't merge the reservations, and then it will be considered its own trip, and then you'll have an issue with proper documentation, and you just don't want that to happen, because what if during the second trip they get into an accident or something, and then your claim is not going to be covered. So don't make that mistake, please, guys. Just make sure that you follow the guidelines so that you don't find yourself in a pickle where you are not eligible for a claim should something happen. So yeah, the main key takeaways are proper documentation always, whether that is in the form of photos upon check-ins and checkouts, or that's in the form of communication. Like I said, in my own experience, it's usually been been an 80-20 rule is what I've seen. Any issues that occur during a trip, usually 80% of the time is because the renter did something. So you want to make sure that you have all that documented should you need to file a claim and get reimbursed for any expenses that were occurred because of any damage that happened. So that's kind of what I've been experiencing lately. Try and think if there's been anything else. Recently I had a renter who, oh gosh, so he was a real pain in my side. He rented the car, got a pretty decent deal. He rented it for about 3 days, which per week I had 350 miles, so it gave him the 350 miles for 3 days. And this was during the week, so fine, it's been slow. He proceeded to message me on the second day of his rental saying how he was going to go way over mileage and he had meant to add the unlimited miles and that he wanted to go ahead and add that option onto the booking. But I very kindly and nicely told him that I could not do that because, well, there's just no way to do that with the Turo system. And so, just explained it in a very nice way. And I just said, these are the per mileage charges. This is just what it is. And then so he continued to kind of argue with me back and forth. And I was like, I don't know what else to tell you. The only thing that I can do when it ends is charge you whichever is the cheaper price. If the per mileage is cheaper than the total unlimited mileage, which on this car was $40 per day, then I'll go ahead and make that exception and charge you for the unlimited mileage amount instead, which I don't agree with that. I don't think that you should normally do that, but this guy asked me over and over and over again, and I just got really tired of dealing with him, so I gave in. Anywho, the trip ended, car came back. The guy only went over by about 40 miles. So I don't know what he was freaking out about so much. And so I went to go ahead and process the reimbursement request, and obviously the per mileage fee was going to be cheaper than doing the unlimited miles. If he did the unlimited miles, it would have been, what is that, $120 extra for 3 days versus the per mileage fee, which was like barely $1 per mile. So his total for the reimbursement came out to like 40 something dollars. Okay, not much at all, especially given the Mercedes-Benz that he rented. It was a super nice car for a great deal. He disputed the request for whatever reason, which I wasn't too worried about because I knew Turo would rule in my favor anyways. So he disputed it and it was just a pain, but Turo ended up ruling in my favor. And again, you want to make sure you have all that documented, because I did respond to his dispute saying, hey, in your messaging above, you clearly asked me to charge you for the unlimited miles instead of the per mileage fee, which would have been more expensive, and I charged you for the thing that was less expensive, so I don't know why you're disputing it. And then of course Turo will verify that. They'll look at your pre-trip odometer photos and post-trip odometer photos, and they will rule based on that. So you just want to make sure that you have all that stuff properly documented. Oh, and then finally, the other thing that I get a lot of disputes on are toll charges. Even when the guest only gets charged for just the toll amount. The other day I had this guy, he was so rude, and I couldn't believe how rude he was, because when we met in person he was actually really nice. So it's funny how people change. So he had about, I think like 10 toll charges, right? Some of them had accrued penalties on them. So his total tolls ended up being like $200. And so whatever, I did the reimbursement request. I uploaded photos of all the tolls to his reservation and so on and so forth. And he proceeded to message me saying something like, oh, I see these games that you're playing with me. You're trying to charge me the penalty amounts because you as a host didn't pay the tolls on time. And so now you have an additional penalty tacked onto the penalties, which the guy clearly didn't look at the total reimbursement at his actual violation paper, because on the violation paper it'll always show you what you owe now, what your current penalty is, which is the initial penalty, plus if you pay late, then this is what your penalty will go up to. So he was only looking at that second amount, which wasn't the number that I requested for. And I was like, wow, so rude. And then I just again, professionally responded. I said, hey, you might want to double check the violation paperwork, and you will see that the amount that I requested for is not with the additional penalty. This is just what the additional charges are. And then he just got real mouthy and just continued to argue with me. And of course he disputed it. And one thing I've noticed with disputes is that Turo support is actually really fast on evaluating the disputes. And so that's why you want to make sure that you upload a copy of those violations to their trip photos, and that you clearly communicate with them, hey, it's under your trip photos. Because almost instantly after he disputed it, support looked at it and they ruled in my favor. It was paid out. The guy kept messaging me, and at that point I just had to ignore him because it's just not worth your time. So those were some of the things that I've experienced recently that I wanted to share with you guys, and how I deal with them. So sometimes you just get people who, you know, they don't want to pay for what they cause, but that's why you provide proof, and you do it in a very organized, systemized manner, and everything is well documented, and everything will work out fine for you guys. All right, guys, on that note, that's about all the stories that I have for now of what I've encountered in these last couple weeks. Hopefully you guys will find this helpful. And that is my sister walking in the background. All right, guys, that means I gotta go. I'll talk to you later. Bye, guys.